Hey you, welcome to Selfish Me. I'm Cam, a business psychologist and a proud late bloomer who finally stopped living by everyone else's rules. And this is your space to pause, reconnect, and build a life that feels true to you. Because putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's powerful. Hello you and welcome back. We have a special guest. Today's guest is someone I've been so excited to bring onto the show. Dr. Hanne is a clinical psychologist with a deep passion for supporting women's health and the founder of Thea Psychology, a practice she built specifically for women. In her work, Dr. Hanne helps women untangle some of the patterns so many of us know far too well. Perfectionism, people-pleasing, and that relentless inner critic that just won't quit. She specializes in acceptance and commitment therapy, as well as compassion-focused therapy. And she brings both a warmth, years of experience to make lasting change feel genuinely possible. Whenever you are stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, struggling to feel worthy of the life you want, or simply tired of shrinking yourself to keep everyone else comfortable, this conversation is for you. And if that's not exciting enough, Dr. Hanne is also stepping into an exciting new chapter, bringing her expertise into the world of leadership psychology and developing a program specifically designed to help women. Dr. Hanne, welcome to Selfish Me. I am so glad you are here.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to talking with you.
The same. I mean, you've been on my mind, especially after our conversation when we talk about women in leadership and how our biology impacts us, especially where we are under stress, what happens for us physiologically, and the hormonal aspects and the changes that we go throughout our lifespan. And I was like, wow, that's very interesting to look at from that side.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time advice for women just completely neglects our bodies. I think sometimes, if we jump straight into the topic of like leadership development, I think sometimes that can look like, courses where women are sort of taught like a list of skills that assume that they can just apply. And it's like, where are you in your cycle? How are your stress levels? What is going on in your nervous system that will either allow this to happen or not? And that kind of thinking is often so missing. And it's just something we have to think about when it comes to thinking about women's well-being, thinking about stress, thinking about how we lead, whether that's leadership in terms of us leading in our work, but also how we lead in our lives more broadly, like how we choose to do the things that are most helpful to us, that are most beneficial, that are most in line with our values and priorities. And to think about that, we have to include our body.
I love that. And you know what, I am almost 40 and this is my first year properly when I'm looking at my cycle and my work and how they correlate. Like I look at my cycle just to where I'm going to be on my period, what I would need to be comfortable, but I didn't really think from it how my cycle actually impacts how I show up at work. Obviously, it has a huge impact. And I think it's partially because, like you said, nobody really talks about it, how our biology impacts how we show up in work. I only read one book that took a woman's female's body into consideration, and the rest was written by men and for men. And I think partially for myself, I expect myself to be productive the same way every day of demand and throughout the whole year. And when I am not, I am such a harsh critic of myself. I feel weak. I feel like I'm failing and I'm questioning, can I actually do this job? Who decided for me to lead a department when I already cried 3 times this morning?
Yeah. And so many women will relate to that. And this is one of the issues with us getting too rigid in what we expect from ourselves. Women's hormones fluctuate so much more than male hormones. That is just an absolute fact. I don't know if it's like 100-fold or 1,000-fold. I'll have to look up the exact numbers of the research. But women are beings of cycles. We are cyclical beings. We are not supposed to feel the same on day 1 of our cycle compared to day 15 of our cycle, compared to day 20 of our cycle. we're not. And if you try and ignore that, if you fight against that and expect yourself to almost robotically always turn up in the same way, it's so easy then to fall into traps around thinking like, oh God, I'm somehow getting something wrong, or I'm somehow weak.
Yeah, not good enough.
And you say, well, no, the normal healthy thing is for me to fluctuate. So how do I work with that? That's a bit of a game changer, because suddenly it's not about am I to this or to that or getting something wrong. It's like, actually, let's honor our biology. Let's honor how we actually work as people and use that to our advantage. Yeah. So I'll give you an example, Cam. So today so for context, so I'm going to share some of my hormone context with you. So I'm in my sort of early to mid 40s. I'm going to say early 40s, but yeah, how old am I? I'm 43. I'm going to be 44 this year. And the fact that I have to pause to work it out, do the maths in my head for something that only happens as you get older. I'm in perimenopause, and I became perimenopausal when I had a 1-year-old baby. Which I didn't expect. You know, who gave me a heads up that that's a thing? Like, nobody. But there we go. So I was, mother to a 1-year-old baby, apparently still very fertile. Oh, and apparently also perimenopausal. And those life stages can and do collide. And so, coming into perimenopause with the addition of, the fatigue and the sleep deprivation and the stress that comes with motherhood, it was a real challenge. And I've had to really learn about working with myself in the context of constant change, which is perimenopause.
Yeah. And
so I'm coming today in the parts of my cycle. I'm like right at the end of my cycle. I'm expecting my bleed sort of imminently. I'm in perimenopause. The certainty around when it's going to come, there's a lot more variability there. But I can feel in myself it is coming. Yeah. I know that today I'm going to struggle more with word finding, because that's what happens in this part of my cycle. And so I'm going to go with the flow with that. I value being able to find words to communicate, but it's also okay when I struggle. I trust myself to pause, maybe have a laugh if my brain ends up choosing some random word that doesn't actually fit in. And I can pause and give myself the time and space to find another way to communicate what I need to communicate. And I trust that it's fine. It's fine for me to struggle with words at times, and that actually it's a lot less important to other people than it feels to me internally. I've had to learn how to do that with myself. Imagine if I turned up I've got to get all my words right. I should be able to speak equally fluently today to how I was speaking 10 years ago. I would just be banging up against myself today, but I'm not, because I allow myself to fluctuate. I allow my capacity to change over the days, over the weeks, and over the course of my cycle. Because what other option is there? That's just biology. It's just how I work. It's how our bodies work. It's how our minds work.
I love it. I love the self-compassion. I have the issues with the words at a certain time in my cycle. And I was wondering, did I run out of the words? Or am I losing my words as well? And the second layer is English is my second language. And I'm am I forgetting the words, or am I not absorbing enough new words to be able to express myself clearly and the way that I want it? Similar to you, I love that I am good with words. And then it just brings me joy, And then when I'm struggling with those, I'm okay, what is happening? And I read your post on LinkedIn actually around when we're noticing those stuff, first thing we might be very self-critical. And you said, what if you just need more sleep? It's winter. And I was you know what? I'm going to sleep a little bit longer in the mornings. And my words got so much straight away. And I was there's such a small thing. And I think we underestimate the small things of drink enough water. Are you having enough sleep? Are you being kind to yourself, or are you being harsh to yourself? I think we just underestimate, and we think that the fix is so much bigger because the problem feels so big to us on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have to have those basic pillars in place, like the nutrition, the sleep, the movement, the social contact, the hydration. They are all pillars that support a good foundation of mental health. they provide a more stability of foundation for us to be able to handle stress. And that is why they are so important to pay attention to, and why we're going to have to lean more into those things, particularly at different parts of our cycle. And as you know, as women kind of come into perimenopause and through menopause, these things become even more important, because when we don't have the stability of the hormonal context going on, it's like we need to bolster up elsewhere. And I think that's why women often, as they come to these phases, suddenly become that bit extra interested in sleep and exercise, because we realize like the buffering capacity that they have. You know, even if you're not in perimenopause yet, even just, you know, watch during your cycle. If you don't do it already, I really advise to women, like, map it out. Get, you know, there's so many hormone like cycle apps out there. Get one and just start to log and notice how you feel over the course of your cycle. Notice how your body feels. Notice how your mind works over the course of your cycle. And as you begin to actually understand yourself more in the context of your biology, you'll naturally understand what you need more of at what point of your cycle. You know, there are going to be times in your cycle where the need for sleep does just increase, or where the need for social contact increases. Normally, like, often it's around sort of ovulation time. That's when we're in our sort of peak, like, out there kind of mode.
Beyonce, they call it the Beyonce phase.
Love it. And then at other points of our cycle, naturally, we will become more introverted. We need less stimulation, and it's all very healthy. But if you don't know that that's normal and that that's okay, I think women do really fight against themselves, thinking that there's somehow something wrong with them, that they're changing, rather than knowing that's just how we work. So if you are listening to this and you don't yet have a good, or at least, you know, a fairly decent understanding of your cycle and how that impacts on you, get an app and just track it for a few months and just see what you notice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same. I start tracking in terms of like how I show up at work, because I have weeks where I can achieve so much. I'm like, oh, this is easy. And then I have weeks, like not even weeks, like few days before my period comes, I'm like, I can't do this job. Like, this is too much. I can't make those decisions. So what I'm trying to do is like have it in my calendar. It's like, this is how you might feel, you know, in this time of the month. Maybe big decisions, it will feel a little bit more scary, but you can still make them. For me, it's almost like a reminder. This is why I feel emotional, not because I'm bad at my job. And I think I always take it personally, like going in, it's like, oh, I can't make a decision about a budget or something because I'm bad at it. But actually, if I look at my cycle, it's like, no, you self-doubting yourself basically, and this is just because of your hormones. And even knowing that, I feel, oh, okay, fine, let me look at the budget again. And then I'm like, actually it's fine. Or I can sometimes push some of it, and it's like, oh, can I get back to you on this next week? And they go, yeah, that's fine.
Lovely.
And it's just like giving that grace a little bit to yourself, and okay, maybe, you know, will be better for the next week. I know there's certain times in my cycle when I'm so much more creative. I get all my creative stuff out there. You know, it started, I'm good with the words. Everything connects in my brain. I love that feeling. And I'm hooked to that feeling. And when I'm not feeling it, I'm like, no. Am I struggling? Am I right for the job? You know, it's like there's the self-doubt that creeps in so much. And the self-doubt is not there for long, but just enough to bruise your confidence.
Yeah. And that's where understanding this isn't about how good you are at your job or not. This is about you being a cyclical being. Like, this is just about the fact that we don't feel the same from day to day. That is very different from what is our skill set. Your skills are there. Your skills are always there. You haven't lost knowledge. But what does change is our level of tolerance of stress. We become more reactive, you know, our stress systems. So thinking about, you know, particularly towards the end of our cycle and as we kind of come into our periods, you know, for some women, as soon as their period comes, that's it, they're better. For other women, they actually have to get through their period and kind of into the new cycle, and then things start to settle again. It's, you know, understanding, well, actually, no, you're just more prone to feeling sensitive. You're more prone to feeling sort of reactive and self-doubting, and learning to have quite a lot of discipline around that, around not entertaining that self-criticism, that self-doubt, and saying like, no, like this is just about the part of my cycle that I'm in, rather than beating myself up. The question is, what do I need? And I love your examples, Cam, of giving yourself permission to say, actually, right now, making that decision, like I'm struggling to access the kind of clear thinking that I want to be able to make that decision. So actually, I'm going to give myself permission to postpone it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, I'm going to get back to you on that in a few days' time. Fantastic. That's you working with your body. Does it mean you're not good at your job? No, it means you're cracking at your job because you're noticing your capacity and you're working with it. Beautiful. That's leadership, Cam.
I mean, that's this year, and actually learning more about my cycle, how it impacts the way my brain is functioning, where before I would look at my cycle and what my body needs just to go through my cycle because it's quite painful. So just like from that perspective, and now it's like the next level because I've noticed like the brain fogs and like all the things that we already have spoken about it. So what advice, because you work with women and you're supporting them in their journeys, what advice do you give somebody in perhaps a senior position or somebody, any position actually, and they find it stressful? Because you don't have to be in a senior position to feel stress in your work. So to women who feel very stressed at work and they go, how am I supposed to cope with this level of stress?
So, God, there's so much I want to say to this. I'm like, right, where do I start?
You have.
Alrighty. So, some level of stress in our lives is to be expected, it's normal, it's healthy, it's actually quite helpful. But stress kind of reaches a certain level and then it can often stop being helpful. I'd say a starting point is looking at your relationship with stress can be quite helpful and beginning to gauge, how am I kind of responding to this stress? I think stress often comes when we perceive demands on us to be great. It can be really helpful to look at what are the real external demands that are being placed on me. Can I handle them? Do I need to push back on things? Do I need to learn to delegate more? Do I need to learn to, buy myself time to do things? Do I need to learn to go back and say, well, you've asked me to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Looking at the time I have available, I could do 1, 2, 3 if they're the priority, but 4 and 5 aren't going to fit in. Is that your priority? Is that what you want me to do? And learn to have those conversations and to advocate for yourself. But it's also really helpful to look at when is stress actually internally generated. So a big thing that women experience, and this is women who are senior or not senior, this is, kind of women generally. When pressure rises, we can respond in ways that are either helpful for managing that pressure, that can respond to the task, that can get things done, that helps to move forward, or we can respond in ways that actually are designed to meet the task, but actually end up keeping us really stuck. And what I mean by that are the patterns like the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the over functioning, the wanting to have hyper control over things, even things like becoming quite dominant in the workplace as a way to try to sort of stay in control. And these are all really common, very normal patterns and ways of trying to respond to stress or to demand. But the problem is they can often end up generating a lot more stress along the way. They're often patterns that kind of in the short term can feel quite helpful, but that actually generate much bigger problems over the longer term. So this is where we need to start looking at, well, what is it in my context that is producing demand that actually I can kind of push back on or manage in different ways? And when is this about me working internally with myself, with my response to pressure, with my kind of like fears and beliefs about who I need to be and what I need to do and so on? And this means like working at the level of our nervous systems, because this stuff runs very deep, and beginning to learn how to do things differently, where our current patterns of response are keeping us stuck. So, for example, if you're somebody who overfunctions a lot, and so a really good example of overfunctioning is overworking. So I'm going to talk you through an example.
Yes, please.
Let's say your boss comes in and they're all like stressed about a project that needs to be done, and the pressure rises, and your immediate response is like, right, you know, you phone home, I'm going to be late tonight. You work late. You probably get up early the next morning to go in to get ahead of things. You're probably skipping lunch. You're just trying to get everything done. I can see you taking a breath there, Cam. I can see you recognise
Yeah.
this, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I do. A lot of women do. And we go into sort of like over-functioning mode.
Yes.
It's a really common response to that sense of internal pressure. But over-functioning over time is inherently stressful. We lose our sort of work-life balance. We lose our capacity to slow things down, to push back on things. We blur boundaries between work and home life or personal life. And the irony is, we often do it to try to be seen well, but actually often ends up really eroding our authority. If we are the one who often, you know, if the team know, oh, she'll always do the extra thing, actually we lose authority. So what we can learn to do is to begin to understand what are our individual sort of triggers for this. And there'll be different things. Like, you know, for some women it's about the fearing sort of negative evaluation from people around them. For some people, it's about their credibility. Yeah. You know, if I don't do this, will I be seen? You know, will I be seen to be as legitimate here, or
as the expert, as the person who knows, as go-to? Yeah,
exactly. Will, you know, for other people, it's about, well, if I don't do it, I'm going to be kind of more excluded from the team. To belong in the team, I have to do this thing. Maybe it's about feeling in control. But these specific sort of trigger points, they often flash through us so very quickly. We're not even aware they're happening a lot of the time. You know, it's just an automatic thing. It's I've just got to do this. And this is just what I do. This is just how I respond to get this thing done. And so I'm just going to do it. And it's a very learned pattern. I think, you know, some people think of over-functioning as, you know, that's just a good work ethic, or, you know, that's them like stepping up, and it's not. Powering through.
Right. Oh, almost seen as resilience. So it's like, oh, they're so resilient and they just get through the stuff, and, you know, and they're out on the other side. Yeah.
And do you know what? It's the opposite of resilience. It's autopilot. Yes, it is. It's autopilot, learned behavior. And of course, so many women relate to it. I know I do. Like, I can see that you do. Like, so many women do.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that this is something that, and it's not to say that men don't overfunction. Of course, some men overfunction, but I think women will recognize that relationship between that sense of internal pressure of, like, you know, and then to go straight into the overfunctioning, because women do not face equal work context to men. Women are judged more on their personalities, whereas men are judged more on their performance. And women are often not handed legitimacy in a way that men are handed legitimacy, simply by virtue of being men. Women typically, not always, but often, have to work harder and give more to earn legitimacy that men of equal skill base are given
from the get-go. Yeah.
And so if you think about it, like, of course we overfunction. Like, of course we do. Of course we do. It's, you know, overfunctioning in the workplace for a woman is actually a very adaptive behaviour. You know, to be the one who'll be like, don't worry, I'll take this one on for the team. I'll be the good one. I'm the nice one. Count on me. I'm not going to push back. I'll do it. You know.
Yeah.
It's so adaptive, but as I say, it has this cost over time.
Yes.
And this is where women can learn to respond differently to that activation that we get, in a way that allows us to consider our priorities, which includes our well-being, which includes our home lives, our personal lives, as well as our work lives. We can learn to kind of pause, slow down, access that bigger picture. Thinking, and then choose what we do next, instead of being pulled time and time again into these sort of autopilot ways of responding to pressure.
Yeah. I love what you said about, like, the autopilot, because everything that you described, that's me like 5 years ago, that led to actually burnout. But I wanted to do the extra. I was the person who was doing extra. And anytime there was a pressure, I never stopped to think, okay, what what that means to me, I was just like, yeah, let's just do it. I would sleep with the laptop. I genuinely slept with the laptop. I was always at work, always switch on, and always stressed. I've missed so many birthdays. I just missed so much of my friend's life and my own life just to prove that I am good for the job. And I just couldn't get off that wagon of not sleeping, drinking so much coffee, pushing myself and promising I will stop by once I finish this project, and then next issue would come and I'll jump on this one. So I would never knew it where to stop, and I didn't really listen to my body at all. And I think that's what burnout knocked on my door. It's like, well, we're gonna stop you because clearly you are ignoring all the red flags. And when I look back, I had so many red flags, but when I was in it, I was blind to them. I couldn't access that bigger picture of thinking, as you said it. And now what I notice is, and this is like years of therapy and like really working hard on this, is like when that stress, internal stress is coming of people pleasing, of, oh, I need to do this, I want to be an expert, I want to be go-to person, I want to be the person who solve the challenges for the business, I feel this like a race in my head and change in my body of like, are we gonna fight, are we gonna fight, are we gonna fight, almost. And then I'm like, we're gonna go have a cup of tea in the garden for 15 minutes, and then I come back and I just feel completely different, and I go, you know what, this is a Monday problem, not a Friday, or actually this is not such a big issue. If this happens, we can deal with the, you know, whatever happens basically. But if I don't step, I just go on that autopilot, and I still do it. It's not like I always am able to spot it. It depends on the many things, but I more often now spot than before. And it's so funny because it just requires me step away from my laptop and just go to a different room, even if that is making a cup of tea or anything. As long as I am able to step away, I'm removing myself physically, and my nervous system is able to reset rather than go into that fighting mode.
Yeah, exactly. And whether that's, you know, women have different patterns of response to that internal, like, threat detection is basically what it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's our threat systems coming online, like, you know, whether it's about like fearing being judged or criticized, or fear of failure, or fear of loss of control, or fear of loss of standing, or whatever it might be that we can all relate to. You know, we have our sort of go-to patterns of response to that. And it sounds like for you, this sort of, you mentioned about the people pleasing and the overworking are real go-tos for you. And women will have different ones. A lot of people will recognize those. The kind of inner critic and that sort of self-criticism you talked about earlier, like fawning, making ourselves kind of small, self-censoring, you know, kind of just going silent, withdrawing, going back into ourselves is a really common one. Another really common pattern is the performing, and by that we mean sort of wearing masks that we think that are aimed to be sort of acceptable. And it's similar to people pleasing, but different. It's about sort of wearing a mask and hiding actually kind of what's going on with us internally in order to be more palatable for people. To change all of these involves exactly what you described, Cam. It's that beautiful thing of actually beginning to notice our nervous systems and notice the activation. And in that moment, because we can't stop the activation, that is like nervous system level stuff that happens, but the bit where we can have control is in what we do next. And so a lot of the leadership psychology work, and I'm in the middle of developing a leadership program for women, is exactly around this. It's how to work with your body, how to work with your nervous system, so that in those moments you can do exactly the kind of thing that you described, Cam, and say, all right, I feel the pull to go into this. I feel the pull to go into fight mode, or I feel the pull to, you know, basically for your stress system to kind of take over and just run the show. And I'm going to do something different. I'm going to step back. I'm going to step into a different space that allows my nervous system to regulate. And it's a really important thing I think I'd like women to take away is this idea of I can feel that activation and I can still lead. I can still choose. I can still do whatever feels most aligned next rather than going into that autopilot. So it's not about we, you know, try and get women to a point where they never feel activated or stressed like that. That's essentially what happens when we die. Like that is not a goal for a live human being to have. We are alive, we have passions, we have trigger points, like we just do. That's people. And actually that's quite beautiful. When it stops being beautiful, it's because we don't know how to work with it. So it's about understanding how to access our wisdom, how to access our values and our bigger picture thinking, even when we're activated. And that is how we then grow as leaders in our own lives.
Yeah, I love that. And that reminds me a little bit. Somebody gave me an advice that sometimes when we are trapped in a situation, there's three things. You can do something differently, you can think differently, or you can maybe manage your emotions. It's like do, think, and feel. And sometimes in a situation, it's like, can I think differently at the moment? Like, no, because I am so angry and my feelings took over. But can I remove myself from the situation? Yeah, I can remove myself from the situation. Like, go do something differently. Or, you know, when I feel low and my brain just plays all these sad stories, all the sad futures. So it's like, okay, I'm feeling low, but do I have to go through unhappy memories in my head? Can I just bring some happy memories? And brain is like, yeah, we have happy memories. Can we play that for you? We can, you know, and it's quite interesting. And I just remember as a triangle, and when I'm like not in the best space, it's like, okay, from that triangle, what is one thing I can do it? And sometimes that is just going to yoga. Yesterday, my mic had some issues, and I was so mad. I am too mad to think straight, and I am so upset. I feel like crying. So what can I do? It's like, well, I'm just gonna still go to yoga. And that took me out, and I came back. I was still mad, but I was able to read instructions, where before that I was not able to follow the instructions, what they tell me to do. I was just so angry with the support system. Poor people on the receiving end.
Yeah.
Didn't do it in that moment, so I would remove myself. It's just quite interesting. What you said, like we still, like the nervous system, our body will still kick in, but you do have the power to lead yourself and how you want to show up. And I agree with you that the way we as women are being seen is differently, and we put those masks to be more palatable. But I also think because we have fear, I do, that if I do show it, I have emotions, they're not going to give me the big projects. Because I once had this conversation with a senior leader, and somebody got upset, a woman got upset, and he was like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to give her that project now. To me, that was a signal to not show, always be the same, have that mask, how are you, I'm fine. So opportunities are not taken away from you.
Yeah. And that's such a shame, isn't it? Because there, the learning for you is that, you know, access to our emotional knowledge needs to be switched off. That part of me needs to be switched off and left outside. And it leaves people very like one-dimensional.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, I know so many women will relate to. There's this real double bind that women are in. That again is specific to women. Men don't experience this. This is a women's specific thing.
Whereby, I've seen the research about it. And once we spoke about it, I did more research, and I'm like, it's worse than I thought it is.
Yeah, it's awful. So for anyone listening who doesn't know about what double bind is, basically what it talks about is how women in leadership, women who lead, face this double bind whereby they can either be liked or they can be respected, but they can't have both. So, for example, you can be a woman who might have, you know, access to her emotions, who can be kind to people, who can, you know, be liked by people, who can be warm, accommodating, wonderful, people like her. But she's not going to be a leader, is she? She's not going to get respect from people. In order to be the leader, to be respected, then she has to be quite hard. She has to be quite shut off, can't be having any of that warmth going on. That's how she's going to get the respect. It's like, fine, she's got our respect, but she's a bit of a bitch, isn't she?
Yeah.
We see it all the time.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to women are so judged on personality, and it gets mixed in this really unhelpful way. So I totally can understand that example you're giving, Cam, because women face this dilemma. It's like, well, you know, am I allowed to be a person who feels, and can I bring authenticity to my role and bring that emotional intelligence? Or actually, do I need to be quite detached and quite cold? Like what, you know, because women are often not afforded both respect and the likability.
Yeah. You know what annoys me about this? If a man was in touch with his emotion, empathetic, a good listener, would show the warmth, oh my God, he'll be like the next president. They'll be like, yes, absolutely, we need that. And this is gentlemen, if gentlemen are listening, this is not against you, it's just the way we are being perceived differently. I am Polish, and the reason why I say that is because I'm very direct. So when I first moved to UK to London, the feedback from the office environment was that I am too blunt, but I delivered.
Right.
So they were like, Cam, I remember my mid probation conversation. That was my first ever job. And they were like, look, you're great, you deliver, you actually over deliver, like your work ethics, everything great. But they go like, but you come across as blunt and cold. And I'm like, I delivered. And recently I was asked if I use a sense of humor intentionally because I'm very likable at my current job. And I said, well, yes, because sense of humor, I just breaks a little bit that directness that I have, but I also think I am hilarious. But somebody actually asked me if it was intentional. I was like, yes, to the extent, because I think sense of humor as well release some of the tension sometimes in the room in a nice way. Although research shows that if a woman cracks a joke, that means she's stressed, but if men cracks a joke, that means they're confident. So I'm like, no, I'm confident, I'm gonna crack a joke. But it's just quite interesting how we are being perceived, and like that we can be perceived as a nice person and likable, and then being also competent. And if we are competent and we don't have that niceness, we are described as a bitch. Why?
Yeah.
Because as a woman, there are certain traits assigned to me, and if I don't show them, then it has a negative impact on me. But being nice is, I don't think, is on top of the list for men to show.
Yeah. So this is where so any organization wanting to work on this is where I recommend, so in the organization, have coherent guidelines and behavioral criteria at appraisals that get applied to the candidate in front of you, or the talent in front of you. So it applies regardless of whether they are male or female or, any other gender identity. The same criteria apply. Break down their role and what is expected of them and make it about that. Because it's so often all the additional things of, well, you've done a cracking job, but you're not very likable, are you? Like, it's so like female specific, that feedback. Like, how often would men get that feedback? Like, so less often. So we need to cut out all the additional unhelpful evaluation that goes on for women that just isn't about the job. Of course we can give feedback to people if they really do need to work on their relations in the team. Like, of course we can. But let's not penalise women more than men. Let's not make it about women's personalities when actually it's about are they skilled and performing well in the job. That's what it needs to be about. And so, so if organisations can get much clearer on their criteria for appraisal, like how bonuses, how promotions are awarded, have it on a specific set of criteria that gets applied, so that we lose that kind of subjectiveness that people bring in when criteria are quite loose. And another thing is like having a culture set from top down where leaders of organizations talk about women in terms of their performance, not in terms of their personalities. So, for example, where you get somebody senior talking about a woman in the team, they don't stand up and make a speech about like how everyone loves Betty, but actually let's talk about how fucking good she is at her job. Let's make it about women's performance instead of constantly reinforcing the idea that actually women are up for public scrutiny about their personalities, because we should not in the workplace.
I love that. You see, I didn't really think of it, the feedback from that lenses when I got it back then. For me, there was the biggest shock was a cultural shock, and I'm very good with building relationships now, and I think it was back then as well, but just like a little bit different. You're right. I think like the way what type of feedback we receive, it can be very different and can be very generic, or can be about our personality and how we show up as a person rather than what we deliver. So I agree with you for businesses to have those behaviors and skills. So when somebody's working towards a promotion, it's like you need to be X, Y, Z rather than, well, are you ready to be a leader?
Yeah. This is where we have to get rid of all the subjectivity of it and have it as an objective thing that everyone is scored against, and that then determines whether that, you know, that person, male or female, you know, what their rewards are, what their promotions are, what their feedback is. As soon as we allow our own subjectivity into it, everything gets very muddied, because like we play out the double bind. And this isn't about saying this is something men do to women. Women do this to women. We do it to ourselves. We do it to other women all the time. You know, this isn't a man versus woman thing. This is about internalized ideas that we can all have around what we expect a man to be or a woman to be, and how we evaluate them and how we position them and treat them. So this is absolutely not a man versus woman thing. This is actually something that impacts all of our thinking, and that actually we all need to be aware of and working on, myself included, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually spoke with somebody in a senior leadership position, and I remember her asking, did I come across as a bitch? And I was like, what are you saying? And she was like, oh, I was very direct. I'm not sure if I showed enough care. Does the team feels that I care about? I'm like, I care about them. I was like, of course they do. But the fact that somebody so senior, and in my eyes, so experienced, just like top-notch talent, has that still self-doubt. There's like, did I came across as a bitch? And I didn't even think that you think of the stuff at this level. That I thought that maybe there is like a line when you're like, okay, I'm free of that self-doubt. But clearly that happens at all levels in different life stages as well.
Yeah. And so what I would say, the way I work on this in myself, for example, when I notice that question come up for me of like, oh, have I been nice enough? Like, it's such toxic, have I been nice? Or like, you know, have I been too direct? Whenever I want to ask somebody that, or I'm wondering myself, I'm always like, no, pause, step back. Actually, what were my priorities in that moment? Like, you know, how did I want to show up in my leadership? Was my goal to provide information? Was it to lead my team on something? You know, let's make it about that. Of course, we have these kind of stories available to us about, oh, you know, am I being nice enough? But again, it's that spotting it, noticing that happens internally, and learning how to pause on it and pivot back to our values and back to our leadership thinking, and effectively like leaving that question unanswered, because it's complete red herring. It's not helpful.
Yeah. You know what? I have it from the other side. So I used to manage a team of 15 direct reports, and it's very hard to adjust your communication style to meet everybody in a group setting. On one-to-one it's fine, but like on the group setting it's a little bit harder. And sometimes I would get feedback from my direct reports that I think you came across too direct or too blunt. And I would always say, thank you. Can I just sit with this feedback? Because when I wouldn't, I'll apologize for the way I came across. So what I start doing is to say, thank you, let me sit with this. And I'll go back to exactly what you said. It's like, how did I want to come across? What points did I want to make it clear? And how I want to make them feel as well in this situation. And if I met what I wanted, I feel like I've done my best. I will be the best type of communication or how I show up in that moment. And I'll go back to the person from who I did receive this feedback, in what state they are and what's happening for them, because I will know that as a manager. And I was like, okay, I see how that would come across too direct for them perhaps. And I'll have a conversation with them about it. I was like, look, this is how I want to cross. This is what I want to deliver. I understand that made you feel. Can we explore why that made you feel the way it made you feel? What is happening for you as well? Because sometimes I feel like somebody's traits or behavior will irritate us because it's something that we are working with, perhaps, or we worry that if we did that, then we will come across that way. And it's a little bit like a mirror. Definitely being a leader, a manager is a mirror. At least was for me.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I think I love that you're then saying, actually, I've thought about this. I don't feel this is helpful feedback for me that I need to take on. Let's think about what it is that's so difficult for you about receiving direct communication from a woman in a position of seniority. Like, what's going on for you there? I love it. I know you don't use those exact words, but essentially that's what you're asking, right? And I think for women, getting really discerning about who we are open to feedback from and who we are not is so important. I know that, again, it's a very gendered thing. Women can be very encouraged to take on feedback from everybody. And I think professionally, this was a huge thing, training as a clinical psychologist. Like, I specifically remember like reaching that light bulb moment of like, gosh, I have to be open to scrutiny and feedback from everybody, and that's being a good psychologist. And I've really had to unlearn that over the years, because it's not, you know, if you have 100 people and 100 bits of feedback, it's going to be so contradictory. A lot of it will be nonsense, some of it will be helpful, but a lot of it actually isn't for me. A lot of it is actually about what's going on with them. So I think being really discerning and thinking quite cleanly about, you know, whose opinions actually really matter, whose thinking do I really value, whose wisdom do I want to open myself up to, right? Who has the impact in my life, and therefore I want to be opening up to their perspectives. Everyone else outside of that is a thank you very much, but you know that the door's kind of closed on that, because we just cannot take on endless amounts of feedback, because you know, a lot of the time it doesn't matter what people think of us. Am I getting my job done? Yes. Am I doing it to the best of my abilities and according to my values and my priorities? Yes. Great. That's me sorted then. You know, I don't need to be available for everybody's scrutiny.
Yeah, and I can't be everything to everybody as well.
No.
I love feedback. But then my learning is similar. It's like, am I going to take your feedback? Is there something from that feedback that is helpful and that will make me a better person? Yes or no? And I think that's the biggest one when it comes to feedback. And when I give feedback to somebody, I always say like, look, this is my feedback. Take it or leave it. Decide what suits for you in this situation. And I usually ask for permissions, like, can I give you feedback? And I think if we are receiving everybody's feedback and applying it, isn't that resulting in people pleasing? It sounds like I'm really trying to please everybody. Okay, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this. And it's so easy to lose yourself, who you actually are. And then you might come across as not authentic. They go, oh no, she's like that with me. She's very different with me. And then it goes like, so who is this person?
Yeah. And how stressful is that for the person who's trying to be the chameleon?
Training.
And it brings us full circle back to this idea of stress, and when is stress actually being generated by our attempts to deal with pressure? We
are coming to the end of the time, so I wanted to say a massive thank you. I really appreciate your time and your advice. I genuinely believe it will help so many of our listeners, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It is always a joy chatting with you, Cam. And to any women listening to this who kind of want to know more about the work that I do or that we do in my team, whether it's about women's therapy or whether it's about women's leadership psychology, do just get in touch. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you, Cam.
Amazing. All the details for Hannah will be in the show notes.
Lovely.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. It honestly means the world to me. If something from today's chat made you smile, think, or feel seen, share it. That's how our Selfish Me community grows. This podcast is about real voices and reminding each other that we are not alone. We are all figuring out how to do life our way, and you are doing better than you think.